I don't want to lead with that. What I want to lead with is we're back the same way we've always been. We're high atop of sparkling downtown Nashville, Tennessee on this Sunday night, August 10th, the year of our Lord 2025. And the reason I don't want to lead with all that stuff is because we got a lot, and I'm in a lot of college football to talk about, because I haven't been around here in quite a while. And you know good and well, we don't actually believe in an off season around here. So that month-long hiatus must have meant something really important was going on. And it was. And as you can hear by this very, very thick packet of papers in front of me, I got a lot to talk to you about. I'll tell you about what's happening with the show, but I'm not going to lead the show with it in the interest of the fact that Camp Intel is back. Whispers, intel, scoop, dirt, whatever you want to talk about. I've got it from coast to coast. I have got a lot of bold predictions for you tonight. I've got, at least by my estimation, several unknowns to talk to you about on the show tonight. I am going to absolutely address what Mr. Jon Gruden said down in Athens, Georgia a couple of days ago, because I think Jon Gruden would kill it in college football. And apparently I'm in the minority to maybe even like super minority on that, but I don't care because I think I'm right. So if I have to be the meme where I'm standing there yelling at the Army about what I think I'm right about, I think I'm right about Jon Gruden. So we got a lot to get to. We're back 3 nights a week until, February? Jesse and Bradley will be here. No more hiati, plural of hiatus. They're watching us in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, where I visited for a good solid 24-hour period last week. Steamboat Springs, Colorado, Norton, Virginia, Jefferson City, Tennessee. My heart just overflows with joy. We could go a million different directions right now. Let's just talk about unknowns. Let's lead the show with this. Last time I spoke to you on a live show, what was it? It was early to mid-July. And so a lot's changed then, but not much has changed since then. We've had a few injuries. We've had still some lingering NCAA eligibility issues, and those are ongoing even as we speak. And by the way, not that I'm going to talk about that tonight, but there's more than meets the eye to a lot of those eligibility things. I may talk about that down the road, but that's not what I want to lead tonight with. There's a lot of unknown out here. I think I kind of sort of have a grip of where we are entering college football 2025. But there's a lot, like, for example, I just want to start with this. Clemson, expected to compete for the national title. Penn State, expected to compete for the national title. ACC favorites, Big Ten favorites or co-favorites. They've been 7s for a long time. Are they really 9s? I mean, are they really capable of winning national championships? That's what I'm talking about. Because we have seen this before. The floor is very high with both of these teams. I see no crash and burn scenario. With Clemson, I don't really see one with Penn State. In fact, I have a hard time seeing Penn State not make the playoff, but no one up there just wants to make the playoff. And what a first world thing to be saying. I don't want to just make the playoff, but I see where you're coming from. I hear we'll be up at Penn State in the not too distant future, but that's just a rumor floating around here. I'm normally the last to find out about that stuff. But Penn State, Clemson, is it just pretty good again? Or are those wide receiver additions at Penn State really the thing that makes it go like that? They're not hurting for wide receivers at Clemson, but I seem to remember Louisville moving up and down the field on them, not being able to stop the run like they should, like Clemson should. So if they're a 7, that's good. That's solid. But that's not winning a national title. That's just making the playoffs. Are they 9+? Are they really? Is there something different about this year as opposed to the last few years? I don't know that. They can't know that. They can think that, but I don't know that until we get into the season. And Penn State may not have a murderer's row in the month of September, but Clemson's got some big ones, like immunity. That's back too. They've got LSU in town week 1. I think a couple of weeks later, Jesse, they go to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. Look at that, week 3. That week 3 game, I don't know where we'll be yet because we haven't even named the name of the tour yet, but that week 3 game, I hear the snoring. Don't you guys sleep on that week 3 game. All right, so that's one thing. In the whole top to bottom or top to bottom of the second tier of the SEC, forget about Georgia for a second. Forget about Texas. Forget about Bama. Forget about LSU. As far as I can tell, looking left to right, everyone pretty much has them at or near the top of the odds board. FanDuel does as well. So tier 1 is fairly set. I may have some minor disagreements with the order, but that's okay. That's why we'll do the JP poll. That's why we'll do season predictions. But past tier 1, normally we're not talking about championship contenders. But this does not profile as a normal year. And I think most of us are agreeing on that at least. So can South Carolina win the SEC? Can Texas A&M win the SEC? Can Auburn do it? Can OU do it? Can Florida do it? Can Tennessee do it? How many Tier 2 teams in the SEC could reasonably jump up and grab the belt? For a long time, we lived in a world where it was just Alabama, or then it was just Alabama and Georgia. And then there would be Bama or Georgia, or maybe an LSU 2019 pops up. But by and large, it was like one or two teams, and you were trying to find a way for something to go wrong for those favorites in order for anyone to have a shot. Well, look, there's a world where LaNorris Sellers just turns into Superman, or DJ Lagway does that, or John Mateer does that. What if A&M's just running the ball for 900 yards per game and they're winning all the one-possession games? What if Josh Heupel just pulls off a total magic show with Joey Aguilar, we think, in Knoxville? My point is there is no elite team at the outset here, at least as far as I can tell. So that makes Tier 2 on a rung of the ladder where they can reach the belt. Now, they got to extend fully. They may have to jump. They may have to get up on their tippy toes, but I think they can reach it. At least someone there can. Another unknown is the entire Big 12. What I do know is it's very entertaining. What I do know is I love it with all my heart. I think Brett Yormark is painfully off base on his playoff thoughts, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. What we're here to talk about tonight is, Arizona State brought back their entire staff. They could win it. Is Kansas State really going to be down 2 years in a row? Devin Dampier comes in at quarterback from New Mexico to Utah, reuniting with an old offensive coordinator there. Kyle Whittingham, a guy who's averaged 10 wins per year the previous 4 years until last year. Might he have something to say about it? Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. They get Auburn week 1 on a Friday night. Iowa State, we open internationally in week 0, but we have Rocco Becht coming back along with, let's just say it, the best head coach in the Big 12 in Matt Campbell. So my point there is predicting this is insane. It's a total unknown. Everything's an unknown. I didn't even mention TCU. In any given period of talking about the Big 12, you're going to leave like 3 or 4 teams out that could win the thing. The Big 12 is such a beautiful thing. Deion in Colorado, this Big 12 is such a beautiful thing. So that's an unknown in and of itself. To drill down on a specific team, what do you expect from Miami this year? I've been being asked that, so I'll ask all of you that. Because the one thing that I think we need to do a better job of on this campus here at Pate State is we need to make sure that if I'm going to get trashed for my predictions, which is totally fair and it is within your constitutional right, that you have to state your prediction up front. So I haven't even made a Miami prediction yet. But if you think Miami's going to be trashed this year, that's okay, but let me know in August. There's a comment section. It works here. I know it works here. So let me know in August. Everyone knows in December whether something went good or went bad, but they're an unknown. They're an unknown because Carson Beck's the quarterback there. They're an unknown because the offensive and defensive lines profile as the kind of lines of scrimmage that could land you in a national championship game. But no one's predicting Miami to go to the national title game. Half of you aren't even predicting them in the playoff. In fact, 3/4 of you aren't predicting them in the playoff. And that's because you either don't trust the coaching staff, you don't trust the quarterback, you don't trust the defense. And speaking of that, Corey Heatherman, year 1, are they going to make a quantum leap in defensive production? I think their personnel is a little bit better than what D'Anton Lynn had to work with when he got to USC or what Blake Baker had to work with when he got to LSU. But it's a total unknown, and they got a much more difficult schedule. For those of you who unfortunately and regrettably took an offseason, I haven't spoken to you about Miami's schedule. Miami's schedule is such that if they were to make the conference title game, that would be their 8th game in a row because the ACC has seen fit to give, I think, 3 of their teams both of their byes within a 15-day period. People say I'm not qualified to be the commissioner of this sport, but yet the people who are running the sport are putting schedules together like this. Listen to this. Miami plays Florida on the 20th of September, bye week. They play FSU October 4th, another bye week. They're done. No more bye weeks the rest of the year. Louisville, Stanford, at SMU, Cuse, NC State, at Virginia Tech, and at Pitt, back-to-back road games in cold weather late November for a team from South Florida to end the year. And if they make it through all that, and they're good enough to play in Charlotte, that is a 3rd consecutive game away from home, maybe in cold weather. Who knows what Charlotte has in store for you in December. But anyway, it's a much more difficult path to navigate with, I would say, more uncertainty this year. But that's what makes it an unknown. That's not necessarily what makes it a weakness. How far is the Tennessee drop-off? I'm in Nashville right now, and it is not couth around here to just assume there's going to be a drop-off. But I have turned over a new leaf this summer, and I am not doing glass half empty, but I'm trying to pour into the glass more realistic expectations. Because even though it's not true, people have accused us in the past of being a little too sunshine, a little too rainbow, a little too everyone can achieve it if they believe it. And you know what? I think Tennessee's going to take a step back this year. How big is the step back? So they were 10-2 last year. Their over-under win total is 8.5 right now. I bet the under on Tennessee, I think 2 months ago. Offensive line, running back, quarterback, defense. There's just a lot to backfill. There's a lot that's a great big question mark, and I don't really think anyone scripted it to go the way it's gone the last few months in Knoxville. Now, I have this whole dissertation that I issued before we went on break, which was I think Josh Heupel could go 8-4 and win this year, meaning that the intangibles and the 2026 and beyond sort of the prism could look good for him as long as they don't get blown out 4 times. But that's an unknown. Here's another good unknown. The coaches poll, I'm told came out the other day. I don't have a big interest in such things. The JP poll will come out later this week. I do have a vested interest in that. But for the sake of amusement, Jesse and Bradley tell me that this is the AP or the coaches poll right now. Texas was number 1. Ohio State, Penn State, LSU and Miami rounded out at 9 or 10. My unknown is how many of these top 10 preseason teams will have 2 losses or more by Halloween. Texas has got Ohio State and Florida on the road, as well as OU, neutral site, before Halloween. And so that is Arch Manning playing his 3 biggest games, his 3 biggest pre-Halloween games away from Austin. Could be 3-0 in those, could be 0-3 in those. Those are all losable games. Ohio State's got Texas at Washington and at Illinois. We think it's Julian Saying there, but we don't know. That's still a legit quarterback battle going on. Penn State, I don't think they'll have a couple of losses. Bama, let's see. Bama has to play at Penn State, Wisconsin, at Georgia, Tennessee, at Missouri, at South Carolina, guys. That is all before Halloween. This is very scary stuff. That's why we circled Halloween. Jesse, you got LSU schedule in there? Think about LSU. Think about all the pressure on Brian Kelly. Week 1, they've been allergic to winning games in week 1. But I'm told they found the cure. They're taking it seriously this time around. I say that mockingly because I am mocking it. They were always taking it seriously. You just got to execute better. That's the secret formula here. At Clemson, week 1. Got Florida a couple of weeks later at home. They go to Ole Miss. They got South Carolina. And they got A&M. You know what? They go to Vandy as well. I don't want to discount Vandy. There are like 3 or 4 losable games there for LSU before Halloween. So a lot of these teams, you can afford 1 loss. Like, obviously, it's college football. You got good on good. Someone's got to lose. But 2 losses before Halloween, that's not how you draw it up for a preseason top 10 team. I talked about the SEC Tier 2. What about the Big Ten Tier 2? Because it is a lot more clean cut in the Big Ten. Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State make up Tier 1. What is Tier 2? Michigan? I would assume people think Michigan is in Tier 2. I would assume, I don't want to assume you think USC is in Tier 2. Do you think USC is in Tier 2? I do, because I think it's just Michigan and Southern Cal and Iowa and Nebraska, Illinois is in here, Indiana is in here, Washington, Minnesota. Wisconsin and Michigan State should be in there if they're taking care of business, but they haven't been. Anyway, the story on this show, and has been for a few years with the Big Ten, has been, when is Tier 2 of the Big Ten going to be a presentable, formidable group of teams that could occasionally jump up into Tier 1? Because no one's done it. It's been like closed access. And that, I think, has been the big impetus for hiring more aggressively from multiples of those schools that I just referenced. But if that's the case this year, if Tier 2 is really ready to bite, then that means Illinois could beat Ohio State. That means Nebraska could do the same thing. That means Washington, I keep mentioning Ohio State. Washington gets Ohio State up there. The bigger upsets. The kind of stuff that really makes you feel competitive, balance, and parity has arrived to the Big Ten. Does that happen? And then I got to talk about Auburn for a second, too. It's tough trying to wade through all the rumors about how Jackson Arnold has looked in fall camp so far. I'll tell you how he's looked. It's been a very mixed bag. That's how Jackson Arnold has looked in fall camp so far. That shouldn't be a shock. It shouldn't be breaking news. In fact, it should be breaking news if he was either totally terrible or totally great so far. But the unknown is very obvious here. It is not the rest of the roster. If Jackson Arnold's B+ or better, the rest of the roster could solidly compete for a trip to Atlanta. Like Georgia goes in there early in the season. That's one of Georgia's tough road games. No one's looking at that game right now. If you're telling me Jackson Arnold's playing pretty high-level ball, if you're just telling me he's fulfilling on the expectation many people, me included, had for him out of high school, that's like a nightmare potential trap for Georgia no one's even talking about. I'm just using that game as an example. But if it's not going to work, then it's going to crash and burn at Auburn this year. And if it's not going to work, it's kind of like Oklahoma was last year. You could have good players elsewhere. In this case, you could have really good receiver room, or you could have good line of scrimmage talent. You could have a decent tailback. If that quarterback doesn't pan out, then they are a 5-loss team, 6-loss team. Season goes off the rails. Everyone's talking uncomfortably about Hugh Freeze. But the point with Auburn, as has been the case many times in the history of that program, is there is such a wild swing of variance in potential outcomes based on one person. It is the quarterback position in sports. That's the end-all, be-all about variance. But that is about as wild a swing as you get in college football this year. Is you tell me what Jackson Arnold's going to be. Not only could I tell you what Auburn's going to be, I could also tell you just fundamentally changed the SEC championship race. Because a lot of folks have to play them that aren't necessarily looking at it right now. You think Oklahoma is looking at that right now and they're scared of it? They just saw that quarterback leave. He's coming in there early in the season into Norman. We're going to be scared of Jackson Arnold. Well, what if they tap into something that you couldn't last year? Same thing. Talked about Georgia going in there. Talked about Bama going in there at the end of the year. Bama fans aren't worried about the Iron Bowl right now. Maybe you should be. Maybe you will be. Unknowns. They're everywhere. Unknowns are everywhere. Let me unfreeze my computer right quick over here. Happy to have you with us. You know who else we're happy to have with us? As always, our friends at Quick Trip. Yes, we don't go anywhere without them. I didn't even go down to the Gulf Coast this weekend without them. I counted three different stops at 3 different Quick Trips. If memory serves me correct, there was one on the coast on I-10. There was one in Saraland, Alabama. There was one in Calera, Alabama. Cold brew? Yes. Gasoline? Yes. Friendly service? Yes. It was all there. And, man, there's nothing like driving the interstate late at night and seeing that big square QT off in the distance. I've been known to push the needle past E, just holding out for it. We appreciate them. They fuel the fall tour, which we're getting ready to announce this week, and they are the exclusive fuel provider of this show. Jesse's not. He has not gotten gas anywhere other than Quick Trip in a calendar year. That's a lie. That's a lie, but it shouldn't be. Let's move on. One of my favorite, and apparently your favorite, staples of the August time frame around here, fall camp intel is back. We got scrimmages going on. A lot of teams just wrapped up their scrimmages. First one, probably have a second one this coming week, and then most of the sport kicks off August 30th weekend. I got to tell you something before we even get into it. I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not going to mention any schools, but I want to tell you some of the feedback we're getting, some of the dumbest feedback ever that is just, it's a head scratcher. It's a head shaker. If I told you there was a chronic issue that a lot of staffs are dealing with right now, Power 4 staffs across the country, what is the chronic issue? Because it's not kids getting arrested anymore. Hardly ever happens. We have chronicled that on this show. There's like exceptions to the rule here and there, but largely kids don't really get in trouble anymore. Here's the problem. It's right here. I'm holding it in my hand. It is a cell phone. And you may think to yourself, oh, yeah, everyone's on their cell phone. No, I'm talking legit phone addiction. Cannot keep your attention in meetings. We are aware of one Power 4 quarterback race right now where there is legit competition, and one of the staff's biggest complaints about one of those quarterbacks who legitimately could win a starting Power 4 job is, We can't even keep him off his phone. And they're not talking about in the dorm at night. That's fine. Do that. Stay out of trouble. They're talking about in the building, in meetings, in installs and whatnot. Like legit addiction. So yeah, I mean, I know if you're roofing down in Lafayette, Louisiana, you're 47 years old listening to the replay on a Monday, that is the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life. But you're not 19 years old. So I don't know what else to tell you. Just if you can do nothing more than achieve the simple baseline of putting your phone down and paying attention, you've given yourself a leg up in quarterback competitions these days. Okay, what's happening at Florida? DJ Lagway, have we bubble wrapped him? Prayer hand emojis here for DJ. How many street fights can this team create early in the year is my growing question. And I think it's the vibe that staff's got. I'm picking up on this more and more. So DJ Lagway, for those who haven't been keeping track of fall practice reports out of Gainesville, he's been banged up a little bit. He had the shoulder thing. He had a calf thing. And so they've been limiting him. And it's not that he couldn't play a game this week. It's that they're handling him for a reason to get him ready to play games. But I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about how relatively banged up they've been at wide receiver. And what that does is it doesn't cross those guys off the list. It's not like they're not going to play this year. What it means is if I'm Florida, I'm losing valuable repetitions that those players would have gotten in August. And so it adjusts my expectations for Florida out of the gate. I think the offense could be a little wobbly out of the gate. That's why the follow-up is, if their offensive line is what I think it is, scratch that. If their offensive line is what they think it is, if their defensive front personnel is what they think it is, and if their tailback room is what they think it is, you know what they ought to be able to do? They ought to be able to win a game 19-13 if they need to in Death Valley in week 3. They ought to be able to go down there and score 23 and win against Miami a week later. They ought to be able to put Texas on the ropes and bloody their nose a little bit. And you know what? If they need to keep them under 24, you ought to trust that you could do that. Now, you hope eventually by the time you're playing Ole Miss late in the year and Tennessee late in the year, you can score 40 if you need to. That offense should be very explosive. That wide receiver room is very underrated. And you are a very dynamic offense. But the more that I hear, so-and-so's limited today, so-and-so, we got to give him a couple days rest. That's okay. That's okay. You just got to have more than one way to win. I think that's the vibe around that staff right now. I mean, it should have been anyway, but I think it really is right now. What about Ohio State? Every spring these days, we have to parse through the quarterback competitions. Some of them are for show. Some of them are for real. And this Ohio State quarterback competition has been for real. That's Julian Sayin, and that's Lincoln Kienholz. Kienholz probably a better athlete. He's not probably. He's a better athlete than Julian Sayin. He probably gives you a more dynamic threat with his legs. I have thought and still think Julian Sayin is going to win this job, but it doesn't matter what I think, because I think the Ohio State coaching staff believes he's going to win the job. He's got to take the job, and he hasn't taken the job yet. That's the beauty of competition. It does not matter. And what you get yourself into, the longer this goes, I mean, I'm looking at quotes from Ryan Day. This is going to go down to the wire. I don't think he's BSing. I think he's being dead honest about that. What you run the risk of is they play Texas week 1. It's not a layup game in week 1. And so what happens is you could think one thing for 7 or 8 months. Like I've thought Julian Sayin's going to win this job for 7 or 8 months. You know what that's worth? Nothing. And I take you back to, what was it? It was Jalen Hurts and Blake Barnett several years ago for Bama. That was the same dynamic there. That dynamic was Barnett was a former 5-star quarterback. Like these days, you say, who? But back then, he was a former 5-star quarterback. And all throughout spring, he had a leg up on this Jalen Hurts kid from Channelview, Texas. No one really knew much about him yet. And then in summer, like Hurts is working his tail off, still think it's going to be Barnett's job. Fall camp. You know, Barnett's taking reps with the ones. He's going to start against USC. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts may get a couple series. And people talk about it like it's a movie script. No, it's competition. It's raw competition. Well, here's what happened. What happened was Blake Barnett, if you've ever seen a deer in headlights, and I grew up in the country, so I've seen several, you know what that game was like for him. If you haven't ever seen one, don't go out looking for a deer, and don't turn your brights on. Just go watch the replay. Barnett had no shot. And then Jalen Hurts comes in, and Hurts took the job. The point being, everything you said and you thought over a 6, 7, 8 month period evaporated in the span of a quarter or two. You run the risk of that happening here. The longer this goes without them naming a starter, you run the risk of that happening. Also, unrelated note, sounds like they're pretty high on their tailback room, and they need to be for reasons I just stated, and also because Ohio State never wins if they can't run the ball. They do need to get offensive tackle settled there. Texas, famously, has pumped a lot of guys into the NFL, specifically on the interior of their defensive line. So back-to-back cycles now, they're having to backfill, and because they're so good at acquiring talent, they could do it last year. Murad Watson, the transfer from Syracuse, has to be a linchpin there this year. It sounds like early returns. He is. So they hit there. That's not surprising. I don't think Texas rolled the dice when they took him. So I love what we're hearing there. I love what we're hearing about Ryan Wingo. That's no like really, really deep dive nugget for Texas fans. They know he's a superstar. The country doesn't know he's a superstar yet. And I really think if there's any name that explodes outside of Arch Manning, maybe because of Arch Manning, it's Ryan Wingo. And Grayson Littleton's a name we keep hearing a lot about, who is former 3-star guy, and he's just worked his way into the rotation. It sounds like he's getting really meaningful reps when they're running nickel stuff. And so you may see him on the field. And the reason that's noteworthy is, again, because they open against Ohio State. So if I've got a young kid on the field and I've got an alien at wide receiver, in this case named Jeremiah Smith, and you're talking about matchups that could dictate that game, that's just something to keep an eye on. Penn State. A lot of scoop from Penn State. Good things so far. I've got the fingers crossed. Sounds like good things so far on these wide receiver transfers, which could be the difference in them losing 2 games and winning a national title this year. Kobe Hudson's a freshman, like him. They got a redshirt freshman, Tyseer Denmark, like him. So all of a sudden, wide receiver depth at Penn State is a concept that could be a reality. You're saying to yourself, I'm going to have to see that to believe it. That's okay. Because I'm the same way. Some things I have to see, like Lincoln Riley having a really good defense. I got to see that to believe it. Wide receiver play, scaling up at Penn State. Respectfully, I got to see it to believe it. I will also tell you that we have heard great things about Amari Campbell. That is a North Carolina transfer at linebacker. Could green dot him. He could be the play caller there for Penn State. And, I mean, that's a team that's really good defensively. Tony Rojas is there. Expect a big year from him at linebacker. But Amari Campbell was talking to some guys that were on the staff at North Carolina last year. Could not say enough good things about Amari Campbell. And so that's a guy that's overlooked because of the wide receivers they went and got. But Amari Campbell, you're going to see him like Oregon comes in there in week 4, week 5, I think. Just remember that name because that's a kid by week 5 I really, really think is going to be a stalwart defensively for them. And you know, they got a lot of them. Some notes. Bama, Ty Simpson's going to win that starting quarterback job. I would be shocked if that didn't happen. It looks more and more like it's Bryce Underwood going to be the starter, going to be the starting quarterback, true freshman quarterback at Michigan. We'll see. I mean, they go to Oklahoma week 2. I mean, that's Brent Venables getting a true freshman in his building in week 2, if that's the way it goes. Now, that's the only way to get better at football is play football. So, it's not like you shy away from that. You're a competitor. I'm just saying the dynamics aren't great there. Colorado. Caden Salter going to win this quarterback battle? It looks for all the world like he is right now, which is interesting. Juju Smith out there. And Tennessee. Again, offense does not look good right now. Still got a ways to go. Defense carried them portions of last year, so maybe that's the way they win again. I keep sounding like I'm so down on Tennessee. I'm not. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have reasonable expectations for them. I don't believe just because you made the playoff last year, you automatically take the next step the following year. I don't think what they've got to do is they got to coach the tail off, and they got to find a way to plug 13 holes with 10 fingers for a little while. And if they can, and they go solid 9-3 this year, that's an ultra successful year. There's a path where I'm happy with 8-4 with Tennessee. So camp intel is back. Some scrimmages. I'm going to be on the road a lot the next couple of weeks. I'm going to go see some practices, practi, plural of practice, and may do a show or two on the road, but going to go talk to a lot of staffs and see a lot of practice. So camp intel is the backbone of our August content map. Okay, we're a little ways into the show. We're like 30 minutes into the show, so I know it's us here now. If you're listening on podcast, thank you. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Also, make sure you're subscribed. So, a lot of changes to the show. As you may have noticed, we've been gone about a month. We haven't been gone anywhere. A lot of people accused us of taking an off season, which is a word we don't even say out loud on the show. So, stands to reason we don't believe in it. Just a matter of start dates and end dates. I knew all the while we had a little gap coming up where we were making some changes and we were going to have to build a new studio, which obviously we did. And we had the right folks doing it because it looks amazing and it sounds amazing and it feels amazing and it's like 67 degrees in here as well. So there's no glisten off the forehead like we were dealing with previously. But anyway, there was nothing bad happening. It was all good stuff happening. We just had to take a little time away. What changed though? Well, I'll tell you, for you, almost nothing because we're not stupid. So we know we got a really good thing here and we call the shots here and we're not going to screw that up. So at no point were we ever going to sell out, as they say? It's actually the opposite. We have acquired every bit of ownership that we can in this show, so there's no selling out. That's not actually how this works anymore. But there's big behind-the-scenes production changes. That doesn't impact you at all. There's big distribution changes. That doesn't impact you at all. There's a huge sales engine that we've attached to this. That doesn't affect you at all. Big tech upgrades. Doesn't affect you at all. So basically, we got the same car. If you were to lift the hood, you would see a brand new engine under it. And it's a lot more powerful, maybe an engine, than we had in it before. But the car's the same. So for you, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday night, same time, same channel, same price of $0, same podcast feeds, same everything. It's just we had to rework some things internally. You probably saw the announcement last week that we partnered with On3 and Yahoo Sports. And we did. We did absolutely do that. We partnered with On3 and Yahoo Sports. Shannon Terry has been a friend of mine for like half a decade now, gave me my first shot up here. I've maintained communication with him ever since then. And when he left 24/7 and started On3 and started doing big things over here, I still maintained contact with him. And there were a lot of things that I wanted to do and that we wanted to do long-term to where in 2025 it made sense to explore partnerships. You could almost look at it as taking on investment, but it's mutually beneficial. And so we've done that with Yahoo Sports. We've done that with On3. It doesn't change anything for you. It doesn't change anything within the fact that we still own 100% of the show. Nothing really changes there. It's just we get a lot more horsepower under the hood. That's really what that boils down to. And again, I look forward to that being mutually beneficial. But this was the plan. You remember I wasn't very open about this 3 years ago because I wanted to be respectful. And I also wanted to play within the rules, if you will. But this was the path that we wanted to go 3 years ago. And I don't mean the exact boxes we checked, but 3 years ago, to give you full disclosure, I had a really, really big contract put in front of me from CBS. And they were awesome to deal with. To this day, they've been awesome to deal with. You still got a ton of friends over there. But the thinking was, okay, your show's doing really well. Here's a huge salary bump. Stop talking about ownership of your channel. We're just going to pay you so much you don't ever worry about that. And I don't believe in it because we wanted to bet on ourselves and we wanted the show to be ours. So I just pushed all of it away. Said, give me less money, but can I have ownership of the channel and the IP and the feeds? And they eventually said yes. Huge, immense thanks to CBS for working with us there. And we did a lot of good things with them, and they did a ton of good for us, and we appreciated it. Still do appreciate it. It's not like I may never work with them again. But this was the plan all along because we wanted to own it. We wanted it to be called that, Josh Pate's College Football Show, which means ours, because you guys kind of made this. You totally made this, actually. But we wanted full autonomy. We wanted right of refusal. I don't want to do anything with the show that we don't want to do, that someone, in an executive suite 3,000 miles away says we have to do. I don't want an ad partner on the show that we don't like, but it's forced down our throats. I didn't want any of that. I didn't want the show to become successful to the point where people who had nothing to do with building it tried to put their hands on it. And so the only way to avoid that was to leave money on the table in exchange for acquiring ownership of it. We did that 3 years ago. Since then, we've scaled it massively. It is the most traffic show, college football show at least, in all of digital media. And this is what we do now. We work for ourselves, and we partner with people who it makes sense to partner with, and we're going to give them a lot, and they're going to give us a lot. And some companies don't get it, some do. That's fine. That's fine. That's exactly the way it should be. And so that's the way it is now. Pate State store is going to reopen very soon. Extremely excited about that. We got the right folks running that thing. We'll have a tour announcement this Thursday, and I'll probably let you know where we're going week 1 this Thursday as well. JP Poll, I'm told, is back Tuesday night. There's a lot going on, a whole lot going on. I'm going to get back to college football in just a second. But remember one thing, if you remember nothing else. To keep the show free forever, it's easy. All you got to do is subscribe to the channel, because about 55% of you who watch normally are not subscribed. It's very easy. Just click the subscribe button and tell your friends about it, because word of mouth is very powerful as well. All right, let's move merrily along. We still take your tweets, we still take your questions. Drew from Ashland, Virginia hit me up. He said, which teams do you think could be maybe the SMU or maybe the Indiana for this year in terms of crashing the playoff, coming from off the radar? And I thought about that, Drew, and I thought, okay, well, by radar, you mean the teams everyone's talking about, the teams near the top of the odds board. I think that's fair. Louisville's not one of those teams, and I think Louisville could crash the playoff party if everything goes right with them. I think I'm higher than most people on Miller Moss. I think they've got a sneaky good wide receiver group there. I implicitly trust Jeff Brom to get the most out of offensive personnel. They've played the portal game. They get it. They understand team dynamics. They get Clemson at home on a Friday night, and they dominated them in Death Valley last year. They're a total portal mystery team. So, I mean, there's a floor that's a little bit lower than I would like, but there's a ceiling that's pretty high. And it just wouldn't shock me if you looked up in November and they're a 10-win team. So they could be that. Their over-under win total is 8.5, but they could be that. I think if you looked in the SEC, Missouri's one of them. I think Missouri's got a very high floor defensively. I've already taken the over on win total for Missouri. Ahmad Hardy could be the breakout tailback in college football this year, much less just the SEC. They know their identity. Missouri's not some team that gets into the season and tries to, feel their way through it. They got NFL guys on the offensive line. Bo Perbula, that's the roll of the dice. Like, that's the quarterback that transferred in from Penn State. Don't forget, man, he is a threat with his legs as well. You go back and watch the Wisconsin game. That's the one you have to watch if you're watching Perbula highlights last year. But the schedule is up on the screen right now. If you're watching on YouTube, there is no Texas on there. There's no Georgia on there. There's no Florida on there. There's no LSU on there. This is Eli Drinkwitz, people. This is Eli Drinkwitz. Be careful. I've got to talk about Nebraska. Nebraska is a threat here. I just want to say something and put it out there in the universe. Dana Holgorsen and a 5-star quarterback with pretty good offensive personnel. That's a winning combination. That's a winning formula. They were 103rd in scoring offense last year. There's obviously a huge jump coming. How high? Like, how radical is the jump? You've got Matt Rule in year 3, which is just basically science at this point. There's no Ohio State on their schedule. There's no Oregon on their schedule. There's no Michigan on their schedule. They could lose 2 games here. 10-2 is probably getting them in the playoff. Now, I know certain Nashville residents that are already there. They're already ready to predict 10 wins for Nebraska. I myself am not there yet. I could be talked into 9. It's going to take some convincing to get me to 10. I'm not saying I won't do it. I'm saying I got to be convinced of it. But because I could at least be convinced, that makes Nebraska a playoff crash sleeper type team. And A&M is too. I have a reputation in Austin. The Texas folks are okay with me. They just think I'm a little too close to Texas A&M. It's only because I've spoken so emphatically about them and I've said things I believe that I have to see it through. I have to see it through. I think I got the right head coach there to see it through. I like the identity of this team. They got really deep offensive line play. They got really deep tailback room there, really good, solid 3 guys that I would trust pretty much anywhere. Marcel Reed can run the ball. I think Colin Klein understands that they're going to live or die with their ability to stretch the field this year, and I think they feel a whole lot better about being able to stretch the field than they did last year. Their personnel's dictating that. I think they'll be better at pushing the ball down the field, and I've got Mike Elko saying, you better handle that because I'm over here with this defense. We ended the season poorly. I called them out at the press conference last year, and so we got to be better. They will be better, and it's a challenging schedule. They all are in the SEC, but I still think dust settles. That's one of the teams that could probably go 9-3 and challenge to be on the outside of the playoff bubble. This is about sleepers. This is not about favorites. Georgia Tech. Yep. Anyone want to talk about Georgia Tech? The ACC's open. You got Clemson and what? Clemson and Hoomst, if you will. Well, Georgia Tech. They're not a mystery to me. I already took the over. It's my favorite bet of all the ones that I'm not going to say cashed, but I already feel good about this thing cashing. Buster Faulkner's the offensive coordinator here. Speaking of cashing in, he just cashed in. It's the first time I think a coordinator has been a 7-figure earner there, and he has earned it. He was at Georgia. He could have stayed at Georgia. He could have waited for a quote-unquote bigger job. He took a chance professionally, and he went with Brent Key at Georgia Tech, and now he's being rewarded for it, and they're being rewarded for it, and they got Clemson at home in week 3, and I'm really looking forward to it because I think that could be one of the sleeper games of the year. Elsewhere, they get Georgia in Atlanta later in the year. There is a disgusting corporate name on the game. They're playing it at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's worth like $12 or $13 million more for them. I get it. I don't like it. I get it. But outside of that, if you look up and down the schedule here, question, where else are they a point spread underdog? At Colorado? No. Temple? No. Wake? Vatech? Duke? Syracuse? NC State? Georgia Tech could be favored in 10 of 12. And the 2 that they're not favored in are both in Atlanta. I like them a lot. I'm ready to say some irresponsible things about Georgia Tech when we do our prediction segment later this week or next week. So, yeah, I couldn't be any higher on them. By the way, I have a purple Post-it in my hand. Need you to make sure you're following on all the social channels because much different things are going to populate those this year. Like Friday Night Lines is back. Friday Night Lines will emanate from, well, question mark, because we don't know which town we're going to be in for week 1. But you're only getting that on Instagram Live, at Josh Pate CFB. I have kept you up to date on what's happening as best I can on X, at Josh Pate CFB. That thing's active all day. And, Tyler, the creator, our version, is in the control room right now, which is a truck for the time being. But he has just sunk his teeth into our TikTok channel. And has 1,000,001 ideas for it, might I add. We're close to 10K on there already. They said we could never do it, and we did it just like that. Josh Pate CFB. You just got to make sure you're following everywhere. Academy Sports and Outdoors is ready to clothe your children for the fall because most, if not all, are already headed back to school. And then you're going to need, I'm told, sporting goods equipment, and they've got it for you. And they've got Big League Chew, not to be chewed in school per se. This is not just a school attire outfitter. They've got your camping, they've got your grilling, they've got your biking, they've got everything you need. And they've got a nice, warm, comfortable environment with which to welcome you in. Now, if you can't get there in person, academy.com has you covered. Yes, this is well known, but it's always worth the visit. Tell them we sent you. It's not good for a discount. It just makes us look really good. We appreciate Academy. We were doing some team previews. Since we didn't have live shows, I said, Jesse, show up to the studio on the last day we have access to the building. Let's record like 15 team previews. So that's what we were dropping on the channel over the past month. They're still there if you want to go watch them. But why stop just because the live show's back? I got a team preview for South Carolina in my hand right now. And I got to tell you, they could have the best offensive player in the SEC this year. And wait, they could have the best defensive player in the SEC this year. So when I tell you it's a new day in Columbia, South Carolina, it's not just because Shane Beamer is saying the right things. It's because they are getting the right things. In this case, it's players. Having said that, 9 wins last year. And they got the shaft against LSU. And they were down to the wire on the road at Bama. It could have been an 11-win team. 9 wins was really good, though. That's the most since several years ago which just means I forgot the stat. I think it was 2017. But it's important to note that in this game, the powers that be still do not allow you to carry over success from one year to the next. I took it upon myself to travel over to South Carolina this spring, and I said, Shane Beamer came out, and I said, walk with me, please. And we went into this big glass room, and I sat him down, and we mic'd him, and I asked him, Bradley, about this very thing, and here's what he had to say. All the attention's great, but I imagine sometimes it's like you got to pull the hot air balloon back down to earth and remind guys, we don't get to pick up where we left off. Right. We start from scratch. We are 0-0, and anything this year's team accomplishes is going to be because of this year's team. Has that been a problem, or do guys kind of get it?
They've been very purposeful, very driven since they came back in January, and that's been exciting to see. But you're exactly right, and that's the point that we've made is, we have a chance to be a really good team, but also understand that there's high expectations for, there's players that are returning, but these high expectations are because of what we did last season. And a lot of the guys that did that are no longer a part of this program. They're getting ready to move on to the NFL.
We could be getting ready to see something very special from LaNorris Sellers this year. So my question number one for South Carolina, what is the ceiling for him? Because he really popped last year, but he could be a superstar. There's a lot of talk around Columbia right now about the impact Mike Shula is having on his passing game, pocket awareness. Shula is the offensive coordinator there, by the way. I believe he will level up. There are people in the scouting world that believe he will be the number one overall pick in the draft a year from now. I mean, they're that high on him. And he is big and he is physical, but there is a layer to his passing game that I think will be added on this year. And if we're right about that, then you better enjoy him while you can there. That's the first thing. The second thing that directly impacts the first thing is I don't trust him at wide receiver. And I wanted them to do what Penn State did. I wanted them to get ultra aggressive and go grab assets out of the transfer portal, and they just didn't. Now, they could know something about their team that I don't, and that something could be they trust their evaluations, they trust their personnel, they trust their development. I hope that's true. I just, past Nick Harbor, I don't really know where I'm looking and saying, all right, that and that and that, that's the depth that I can hang my hat on. Who's he throwing the ball to? That's the second question. The third question is, how effectively can they withstand defensive attrition? Because while you watched the NFL draft and you said, oh, another Gamecock, I watched it and said, well, who are they backfilling that position with? You know, they played Clemson last year. They beat Clemson on the road. That was great. Why did they beat them? Well, I mean, it's because Cade Klubnik made plays down the stretch. Yeah, but they beat him 17-14. So the answer to the question is, your defense played out of its mind. And do you have that caliber team again this year? They were top 20 in points per game, yards per game, rush yards per game allowed. I expect a step back, which they can afford if in the aggregate Sellers has a step up. They can't fall off a cliff. That's what we can't have, and that's a big question to me with them. Their best position group is on defense, though. Their best position group is the edge position. Dylan Stewart, freshman All-American, superstar, not much question about him, but Kyle Kennard's gone. Brian Thomas Jr.'s back. He was their number 3 guy last year. They recruit well at this position. They develop well. I trust them at edge. Breakout player for South Carolina? I think I've got to go with Nick Harbor. Although we just talked about him, we talked about the wide receiver room past him as being maybe a bit of an unknown. Nick Harbor came in. He was the only 5-star I ever remember us covering on the show where when we played B-roll of him, it was track highlights. We've had track stars in college football before, but normally it's like a 3-star guy. And so it makes sense that we're showing track highlights. Harbor was a 5-star, and we still showed track highlights, and it was the most freakishly insane stuff you've ever seen. This was before AI swept the world. You would have thought if we showed that B-roll in 2025, it was AI. It was not. He is not running track anymore, is my point. So he is solely focused on college football. A tight end led them in receiving last year. There was no wide receiver over 400 yards on this team. And so it's his third year, same system. He's got to be a star for them. He's got to be 1,000-plus yard caliber guy for them this year. Let's take a look at the schedule. They've got, by our internal metrics, the number 6 strength of schedule nationally. It's not easy. I do love the runway they have, though. They play a good competitive game that, frankly, they should win in week 1 in Virginia Tech. That game's in Atlanta. I think it's on a Sunday. Okay? South Carolina State week 2. They get Vandy at home week 3. They go to Missouri in week 4. They get Kentucky week 5. Flat out telling you South Carolina should be 5-0 after that. Disrespect to whoever, whatever. They should be 5-0. They better be. Because after that, it gets real in a hurry. How about a little 4-game stretch of at LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, at Ole Miss. Then they're going to give you a bye week, but then you come back and you got to play at Texas A&M. So that 5-game stretch there in 6 weeks, that defines the season. Even if you get off to a 5-0 start, that defines the season. Now, the one thing that's weird about South Carolina is they play Coastal and Clemson the last 2 weeks. So their conference schedule is over November 15th. Hayes in the barn. They're just kind of scoreboard watching after that. We ran this through the model as we do with all these team previews. Best case, worst case, most likely. Model's got 10-2 best case. Now, I tried to push for 11-1, but apparently the model thinks that little 5-game stretch there is too tough. So it sees 10-2 as the best case. It's got 5-7 as the worst case. I agree with that. There's a bunch of losable games over there. Worst case obviously means you lose all of your losable games. The most likely record for South Carolina is 8-4. Now, stop, because if you're just an outsider, if you're living in Des Moines, Iowa, for example, or maybe you're living in like Reno, Nevada, you only know South Carolina from the outside, you would see the computer spitting out most likely record of 8-4, and you'd say, man, with that schedule and that history as a program, that's pretty good. I don't know that South Carolina fans are okay with it, which is a good thing. Expectation's a good thing. It's not exactly the Shawshank quote, but it's a good thing. It could be the best of things as long as you don't torch everything and burn it down to the ground when, 8-4, 7-5 actually happens. So it's not my prediction on him yet. I'll have my prediction coming up soon. But 8-4, the model says, for Shane Beamer. You're watching us in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Augusta, Georgia, Las Vegas, Nevada. Appreciate you guys so much. You know what else is back aside from just us? Bold predictions. Bold predictions are back. Had a solid batch of them this year. Bradley, here's a good endpoint for you. Bold prediction season rolls on. What are some of the things you believe? In fact, Zach hit us up. He's a good example of something that's very, very bold. We're going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 here. Zach from Locust Grove, Georgia said, Georgia makes a lot of people look foolish for forgetting about them. Sidebar. No one's forgotten about Georgia. Not a single soul has forgotten about Georgia. No one's predicting them to go 7-5. No one's disrespecting them. No one's discounting them. So save all that. Let's get to the prediction. Zach said Georgia is going to beat Texas, Ole Miss, and Alabama, each by double digits. They get all 3 of them at home. We already got numbers on the game from FanDuel, so they're favored by 4.5 against Bama. They're favored by 10.5 against Ole Miss. They're favored by 2.5 against Texas. You played 2 of them last year, and they beat you on the road. You beat Texas twice. You're beating all 3 of these teams by 10+ this year. I'm not sure I buy that. And you may go 3-0 against them, but I don't think you're beating all of them by 10+. Those are really good teams. So I'm going to put a 9.25 on that one. The other thing I think about is I think about Georgia, I think about Kirby, I think about how much he's talked about his 2 deep being filled with first or second year players, a lot of second year players on his 2 deep. And I think about defensively, how that could bite you. Not being able to get to the quarterback enough could bite you when you play coaches like Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, and Kalen DeBoer, because those are the 3 you just listed. I just don't think you're running away from all 3 of them. You may beat all 3 of them, but running away from all 3 of them by 10+, I'm going to put that at a 9.25. Next up, we got to do some math here. Edwin from Memphis, Tennessee, he said Ole Miss, Nebraska, and Virginia Tech combined for 25 or more wins. This is a 9 for me. Okay, so let's do some math here. So the over-under win totals for these teams. Ole Miss is 8.5, Nebraska 7.5, Vatech is 6.5. They don't like Vatech. Virginia Tech is 6.5. Well, we added it all up. Stats and Info reliably tells me that adds up to 22.5 wins. So we need to find some extra oomph somewhere. I just mapped out the season on the bottom of my piece of paper here. If I can get Ole Miss to go 10-2, and I can get Nebraska to go 9-3, Virginia Tech can go 6-6, and this adds up to 25. It's still it's hefty immunity. It's a lot to lean on. I'm going to put a 9 on this. It's not so bold that I call it crazy, but I'm going to put a 9 on that. Two of them's got to come through for you, and one of them cannot crash and burn. Next up, this is not bold at all. Our good friend Barrett Sallee, who is single-handedly responsible for the Atlanta Braves falling off a cliff and into the abyss this year. He said Georgia Tech will make the playoff. They may. They may. I don't want to put rat poison in the well here, but this is like a 7 for me. This is not bold, Barrett. Try again, my friend. The actual odds, if you're interested, are plus 730 for them to make the college football playoff. I just think there's a 10-2 in the cards here, and that gets them in the postseason, possibly. And maybe it gets them to Charlotte with a chance to play their way in. I just hope that the committee does not hold SMU last year against Georgia Tech this year, because I could see that happening. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. Lastly, Brandon Marcello, another friend of the program, with a spiffy new coat I saw he got in the mail the other day. Utah wins the Big 12. Now, the rule on this show is there is no stupid Big 12 prediction. However, any prediction is bold in the Big 12 because no one has the slightest clue what's happening out there. So we're going to put an 8.5 on this, even though Utah's got about as they're in a 4-way tie to win the conference right now. That's how insane the Big 12 figures to be. So really, you're predicting the favorite is going to win the conference, and I still call that an 8.5 because no one knows anything. This is FanDuel basically saying, yeah, have at it. If you think you know more than we do, have at it. 4-way tie for the best odds in the conference. Utah's going to have a big turnaround this year. Devon Dampier is a quarterback that Utah fans know, the Big 12 folks know. He transferred from New Mexico. He's reunited with Tim Beck, his old offensive coordinator there, and he's probably going to contend for like breakout player of the year in the Big 12. Good athlete. Kyle Whittingham, up until last year, was averaging like 9.5 or 10 wins a year. So they're going to bounce back. Like, I got very little doubt about that. Are they going to win the league? I don't know. Marcelo, I don't think knows either. Does Kyle Whittingham know? I don't know. If you want to go check out Utah, though, you can do it. Friends at SeatGeek are back, by the way. I seek functional value partners on this show. We throw Academy gift cards out all the time. I gave away like 1 million gallons of free gas from Quick Trip last year. Well, I have it on good authority. You guys are going to games this fall and you need tickets. So we always go to SeatGeek and say, yes, we'll partner with you. What can you give our people? So the code's back. We got the discount back. So right now, go buy your tickets if you're going to buy them. If you're not, hold on. Budget may be tight. But if you got a little extra disposable income, you want to go watch Utah or USC or Georgia, whatever, SeatGeek is the website for you. And as you're checking out, just enter PATE10, P-A-T-E 10. That's the promo code. I'm going to get you, what am I going to get you? I'm going to get you 10% off any order below $200, and I'm going to get you $20 off any order above $200. So if you're going to buy them anyway, do it. Go to SeatGeek and reap the rewards of merely watching or listening to this show. You don't even have to thank me because that would be rude of me to ask you to do. I have a controversial piece of paper in my hand right now. USC's team preview is something I have struggled with. I've put it off. I've avoided it because I've been really, really back and forth on what I expect from them this year. So to set the table a little bit, the external vibes around USC are way different than the internal vibes. The external vibes are they suck. Lincoln Riley is headed nowhere fast. They've regressed 3 seasons in a row record-wise. That's true. I can't defend that, nor do they try to defend it. But the internal vibe around there is we already made the defensive changes we needed. They believe they may have the best defensive staff in the country. And if you argue with that, you at least have to grant that they have one of the best in the country. They believe they hired the right general manager. They believe they completely reworked their personnel department. They believe help is on the way. Like, they believe the caliber of player that they have there will only get better. Does that click this year? Because last year they lost famously. I think this is one of the most famous stats of the offseason. They lost 5 Big Ten games they led in the fourth quarter. That's hard to do in several years, much less 1 year. So my questions for them, what are they really made of? Like the first one, have they Big Ten proofed themselves? Because I watched them last year and they didn't like feel like a team, like an operation that was built to win in the Big Ten, which is bad because that's the conference they're in now. Their offensive line couldn't close games. You remember that. I just read the stat to you. They were 82nd in rush yards per game. This offensive line still feels like it's a work in progress. And so if you're playing the teams you have to play again this year, you know how they're built on the lines of scrimmage. They may not have the most dynamic playmakers out wide like you do, but they can also put you in the dirt. Can you do that to them? Can you close out games? That's the first thing. The second thing, could they win a game defensively if they need to? Now, that's something we don't ask about Lincoln Riley teams very often. But you know what? They've got the defensive staff, and it's in its second full year now. They got much better personnel there. They went from 121 to 56 in scoring defense 2 years ago to last year. But they were still 100th in sacks per game. So the havoc rate, the ability to affect the quarterback, that's got to get better. They need better guys on the edge or better production on the edge. But if they're in a game early in the year and offense isn't clicking yet, could they win a game that's played in the low to mid-20s? Historically, no. Maybe things have changed. Third thing, what if it's just a bunch of one-possession games again? Because the conventional wisdom out there is, well, we lost all those games last year. We'll be on the plus side of those this year. But there's no guarantee that that's the case. If the competitive character of your program is such that you don't know how to win games, that doesn't always change over the course of January through August. So something fundamental has to have changed. It could be luck. Luck could change. But, you know, there's some coaches, you go and you look at them historically, and their record in one-possession games is incredible. Kirby Smart's one of them. And then there are other coaches, and there are other programs even. I think of Nebraska in recent history, where they cannot get out of their own way in one-possession games. That's because it's not totally randomized. There is skill in knowing how to close out games, and there's also a lot to be said for folks and teams who don't know how to close out games. So USC couldn't do it last year. Has something changed? Those are the fundamental questions to me that have to be answered there. I think their best position group's their wide receiver group. I think Jacoby Lane can be one of the best wide receivers in the country. He had 12 touchdown catches last year. Mekhi Lemon can be that. They lost some guys in the portal, and yet I still think it really profiles as a great wide receiver room, a dynamic wide receiver room. The breakout player has to be the quarterback here. Jaden Maiava has to be the breakout player. A lot of times you want to look past the quarterback. You know, you want to overthink the room a little bit. There's no need to at USC. A Lincoln Riley offense requires a lot of leverage on that quarterback position. You can't hide the quarterback position in this system. This is not Iowa, this year notwithstanding. This is not Iowa. You don't win in spite of the quarterback position with Lincoln Riley. They got to lean on him. And, you know, so far, fall camp intel is what fall camp intel is. But I'm looking forward to that because Miller Moss is out of there, and I'm high on Miller Moss. So the fact that, and it happened last year, it's not like it happened after the year, but the fact that this guy now takes the QB1 job there, there's a lot riding on his performance this year. Let's take a look at their schedule. I have a game that I think is being criminally slept on. It is right there. If you're listening on podcast, I am pointing to September 27. I'm pointing to Illinois on the road for USC. That is the game the season hinges on to me. Because you could make the argument, Missouri State, Georgia Southern, at Purdue, Michigan State at home, they're 4-0. I would predict them to be 4-0. They go to Illinois. Do they win that game? Because if they are, they're 5-0, and then they got a 2-game stretch coming up of Michigan at home and at Notre Dame, which would largely define their season, but they'd be 5-0 going into it. But there is also the flip side of that coin where they go in and get their mouth bloodied and they can't answer and they lose 17-12, and then it starts to go downhill and the tires get wobbly again. I think the Illinois game is going to tell you a whole lot to maybe everything you need to know about USC this year. There's no Penn State on their schedule. There's no Ohio State on their schedule. They got a good bye edge when they go to Nebraska. They got a bye before they go to Nebraska. That's Nebraska's 5th straight game. I got a lot of doubts. I got a lot of questions about them still. There are a lot of worlds where they can win 10-plus this year. Just telling you, like USC hadn't fallen off that bad. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. We've got a best case scenario of 11-1 for them. I thought there's maybe a 12-0 in the sample size. 11-1 though, best case, says the model. The worst case, 5-7. I don't even want to think about what happens coaching wise if they go 5-7. The most likely scenario, according to the model for USC, is 8-4. Now I got to tell you, my suspicion is I'll be higher with my own prediction about them than the model is, but I do understand the model's thinking there. It's not like it's Texas. The model loves Texas. The model hadn't always loved USC, so the model has to see it to believe it still. You can go right now, though. If you disagree with the model, and who knows, I may, you can go to FanDuel right now, exclusive odds provider of the show. You can look at those Big Ten odds, for example, like Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon. But that Tier 2, that's where USC is. That's where Michigan is. And I look at the Illinois game, and if I'm betting USC's season win total, I'm basically betting the Illinois game. Like that to me is where it hinges. That's where it changes. But you can get all these odds at FanDuel. Every odd you've seen on the show tonight, you can get at FanDuel. There are odds to make the playoffs, odds to miss the playoff. You got different Heisman market over there. You got all kinds of week 1 lines already up. You can bet the Ohio State-Michigan game over there right now. You got a lot coming with FanDuel this year. It's a very, very valuable partner. We appreciate them. Okay, a couple of more things. I'm going to get to Jon Gruden before the end of the show, but a couple of more things here. This wasn't all that difficult. I was able to rattle these off pretty quick. We had a question about quarterbacks. And a lot of people have asked a version of this question. William from Lansing, Michigan said, if you had a choice of any quarterback to start at Pate State this year, who would you pick? I went with DJ Lagway. I think DJ Lagway at his best can be the best quarterback in the country. Now, I have, just like you, heard the injury concerns. I've seen the injury concerns, but I think when you blend raw talent and explosiveness and deep ball accuracy, when he's at his best, he can be better than anyone in the country. DJ Lagway led the SEC last year in completion percentage on balls thrown 20 or more yards downfield. And I still think there's a way for him to level up his passing game. 2025 should be his pop year. And I'm not just talking about at Florida. You said I can have him at Pate State, where I've got good personnel everywhere and high-character kids as well. DJ Lagway would be my number one. I'm going to tell you who's close behind him, though, that many, many more people are sleeping on, is John Mateer at Oklahoma. I've bought all the John Mateer stock. I've got a John Mateer Heisman Trophy ticket in my back pocket. I couldn't be higher on him. And there are people out there who question his mechanics, who have not the slightest clue about quarterback mechanics or throwing mechanics. I'll tell you what, you want to see a sidearm throw? You want to see different arm angles? Watch him on the run. Watch him throw the ball on the run. Watch the accuracy. Mid-range, downfield, watch the accuracy. I think that his improv ability is elite. He ran for 826 yards and 15 touchdowns last year. And I'm talking about his throwing ability, but he can also run the ball. As much as people think he's got to adjust to the SEC, and as much as people think, ooh, John Mateer, you're going to really level up the quality of competition this year, he is. I'm telling you, I don't have an issue with it. Quite the opposite. I think this league's going to have an issue with him this year. John Mateer is going to be good. So if you took Lagway and I was number 2 in the draft, I'd have no problem with him. I'd have no problem taking Cade Klubnik if I had to wait for number 3. That growth was impressive last year. I think he may have played his best game against Texas. He was 26 of 43, 336, 3 touchdowns against Texas. They lost, but he's good. He's a weapon with his legs. But more so than anything else, in an ocean of unproven QBs this year, I get proven production if I go with Cade Klubnik. And last year was incredible. If he just gave me his performance last year, I'd be okay with that. I can win with that. He could improve this year, but I mean, even if he doesn't, I'm okay with that. And lastly, the one I cannot leave off this list. I cannot leave the 6th name in the Heisman odds right now is LaNorris Sellers. LaNorris Sellers could end up being the best quarterback in the country this year. His wide receiver stable does not match up with maybe some of these other guys, but LaNorris Sellers could just be a monster this year. I don't do the whole comparison to Cam Newton thing. I'm saying if there's a guy out there that's capable of collectively raising the level of play around him up just by his presence. A la Cam Newton on Auburn 2010. It's LaNorris Sellers at South Carolina this year. You don't know the names of his wide receivers. He can make you know the names of his wide receivers. He's built like a linebacker. He's incredibly astute. I keep hearing a lot about the impact Mike Shula's having on him in his pocket awareness and his throwing ability. Because that's not what people think of when they think about him right now. But I think maybe by the season this year, by the time that's over, I think they will think that. He extends plays as good as anyone in the country. So I know you asked for one name. I gave you four. I'll tell you what. You can take your choice, and I'll take whatever's left over. As long as one of those guys is left over, I'll take him. All right, a late addition to the show. I had to talk about this. So, many of you hit us up. I'm just going to pick Derek here. Derek hit me. He said, what are your thoughts on Jon Gruden saying he would die to coach in the SEC? I think he'd do it right now. I think he'd do it. He spoke at Georgia the other day. For those of you unfamiliar, he was down there watching Georgia practice. I think Kirby had him speak to the team. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, the only reason I really came here is I want to coach again. He said, I would die to coach in the SEC. I'd effing love it. And he's not messing around. Jon Gruden's looking to get back into coaching. Now I want you to listen to me. There's no gray area on this. My opinion on this is Jon Gruden can kill it. If he gets into college football coaching, Jon Gruden can kill it. Let me be very clear. I mean the right situation. Because no one's going to kill it in the wrong situation. So Jon Gruden could absolutely win in college football. And for those of you who say he can't, I know there will be some of you out there. Because I know our audience. I know what my comment section looks like. Here's what I'm asking you. What is it that it takes to win in college football that Jon Gruden lacks? If you doubt him, if you think if he gets hired, it'll be a joke, what is it that it takes to win that he lacks? Because I'm going to tell you what I think it takes to win. I think you've got to be able to hire. I think you've got to be able to acquire talent. In the NFL, that means drafting and free agency. In college football, that means recruiting and portal and free agency. Can you develop players? In college football, especially this next bullet point, are you flexible? Can you roll with the changes? Because that has been eternal lately in this sport. And most importantly, once you get past all that, do you ignite a fan base? I got my doubts about whether Belichick will work out at UNC, but you better believe he ignited that fan base. You're looking for different revenue streams these days. It matters more these days. Do you understand the dynamics? If you're sitting there in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Jon Gruden is announced as your new head coach, you think Cal did something for basketball juice in Northwest Arkansas? Imagine what hiring Jon Gruden does. I'm asking you, I'm really asking you, what is it that it takes to win in college football that he doesn't bring to the table? Because I think he'd surround himself with an excellent staff. I think folks would want to coach with Jon Gruden. I guarantee you, I know about 90% of the fan bases in the country would be very open to Jon Gruden becoming their coach. And the 10% who wouldn't be open to it have great head coaches already, so they don't need it. Which jobs would he take is the question. To me, Jon Gruden's going to get a head coaching job, okay? I'm putting that out there. I think Jon Gruden's going to be a college football head coach. It's not about which programs would offer him the job. There are a bunch of them out there who will offer him the job, I believe. The question is, which programs would Jon Gruden be open to taking the job at? Which jobs appeal to him? Because there's a thought right now in the coaching world for the younger guys who are up and coming that let's say you're at a G5 program right now. You don't jump until one of the top 15 jobs in the country are open. And that wasn't the way it used to be, but it is now. Jon Gruden's not a young up-and-comer, though. So if one of these jobs were to open and it's like the 21st best job in the country, I think Gruden would probably jump at it. The reason I mentioned Arkansas is because there's kind of a weird tweener sort of vibe there right now with Pitt, which I hate because I love him. But it feels that way, and there's big money in Northwest Arkansas. They've got to go about it unconventionally. It just feels like that's the kind of place that if this button were to be pressed, if this lever were to be pulled, feels like Arkansas could be one of those programs. I haven't heard anything. Let me be very clear. I haven't heard a word about that. I'm thinking out loud here. But make no mistake. Children, make no mistake. Jon Gruden would work in college football. And I hope, I may even pray tonight before I go to bed that Jon Gruden gets the opportunity in college football. Okay. Hey, you know what? Someone just texted me an irresponsible rumor, a groomer about Jon Gruden, and I saw it. I see that. I'm not repeating it on air, but I see it. Appreciate you guys. So Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, we're back. Normal rotation. And we are not going anywhere anytime soon. So appreciate you guys being back. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you tell all your friends we're back, because not all of them may have been tuned in tonight, although we had a healthy audience tuned in tonight. We'll see you again in 48 hours. So for producer Jesse, for director Bradley, our entire crew here making this all possible, show goes off without a hitch. That's what happens when you're working with professionals. All I have to do is sit here and try not to be stupid. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you again Tuesday night. Until then, take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.